Alright, y'all, so I was thinking about making a video about men and women and how different the dating market seems to be. You have women who are at the top of their game, who are very attractive, of course, and they have Instagram, and you have all these simps that are like pumping them up. And so women tend to have an overinflated ego about themselves, and men don't really mean anything to them, even though society's propped up by men. And so men get treated pretty much like shit today, and I'm not saying it's not unearned, it's just, men do tend to get the, ghosting treatment and all this other. There's so many fucking games today, it's ridiculous. But men tend to be overly conservative, women tend to be overly liberal, and the two parties generally are not going to get together. It's of course part of their nature, but trying to have a kid with someone who's on the complete opposite side and has no sympathy for anything that men think is really kind of a disaster waiting to happen. I mean, what is the kid going to pick up? Are they going to pick up and try to go with two boring factions here? Or is it better? It's at least better to have two parents that have some sort of like common ground, right? So even though I'll make this video at a later point, where this kind of brainstorming led me was actually going back to school, and what a fucking joke it was, especially in the early 2000s. And I know I made a video about 6 or 7 months ago about private school versus public school. I learned that public school is way, way, way more common than I thought. I thought it would be like a 2-to-1 ratio of people going to private school versus public school. Rather, public school, for every 2 students going to public, I thought it was 1 person going to private, but it's more like 9-to-1. Almost everyone is stuck with public school, and yes, public schools can be good depending on where you live, and public schools can be horrible on the flip side of that. But private schools tend to be the neutralizer of that and tend to be a lot better because you're also keeping yourselves away from the general public and the disparity you can see in really dysfunctional households and how kids bring that to school. And so this gap between functional and dysfunctional, and it's not necessarily the fault of the kid, it's just reality and what comes to school. That disparity is completely shortened in private school, and you generally get a lot more functionality, 2-parent households, that sort of thing, when you have kids that go to private school. So even though we know that private school tends to be a lot better, and private school is still fucking dog shit, but compared to what you learn in public school, it is so much better than exposed. You should do everything in your power to not expose yourself to public school unless you're in one of those really, really good regions. For example, in Dallas, I know Plano's a really nice place. So if you go to public school up there, it's actually not so bad. Or like McKinney, the kind of northern Dallas area. The public schools tend to be a lot stronger. But like if you go to public school in the south of Dallas, like it's just like oof, from what I understand. Anyway, I want to talk about my experience as someone who went to private school, and even though yes, I avoided a lot of the dysfunction from public school and the families that they might bring, I still hated fucking school regardless. It was torture for me. As someone who is very much maybe doesn't have quite ADHD, but has just like your typical male behavior, not really into arts and crafts, does not draw well, does not have good handwriting. My God, the amount of standards I had to write because I went to Catholic school, because my handwriting was so fucking bad, and I just didn't give a fuck about it, and I didn't want to sit there and wait and do all this stuff. I remember I got in trouble for first grade. Instead of writing straight, like across the line, like let's pretend this is like my piece of paper, my writing would actually like curve upward because my brain was just like going a little too fast and a little bit too schizo. And so I had to rewrite things and constantly do, and it was just like a torturous process. It was not where I wanted to put my energy as a 6-year-old or 7-year-old boy. I just wanted to go outside, play baseball, play basketball with all sorts of kids, but that physical education was so limited in grade school. It was pathetic. And naturally, I was playing sports outside of school, but during school, it was like you had to sit there for basically 6 or 7 hours a day. Lunch and recess were like the best parts because you got out of the fucking classroom, stopped sitting around, and stopped having this bullshit where you're like pandered to for like trying to be almost like a girl. You have to do, why should someone who was in my demographic have to like learn how to draw well? And yes, I understand handwriting and writing stuff is important, but my God, and especially in the age of like now where we have computers, you don't have to write anything. It's kind of funny. I mean, the last time I wrote someone that wasn't the IRS when I was mailing a check, my God, I think I wrote my mom one time, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I think she said thank you for the handwritten note, and it really meant something to her, so it was kind of nice. But like, my God, it's with my handwriting and all that, I just don't give a fuck. Like, especially in the age of computers, we don't need it anymore. I understand it's very touching, but for the most part, nobody really cares, right? So why do we put all this emphasis on like arts and crafts and gluing and coloring and all this fucking crap in grade school, when someone like myself would have much preferred being just like outside or doing something? And the worst part of being there for 6 or 7 hours a day too is just because the bell rings at 2:30 or 3 p.m. or whatever time, that doesn't mean the day's over, because you have this awful invention called homework. Generally, school taught you these topics that you don't give a fuck about, and at least when you're in school and the teacher's talking and doing it themselves, you don't really have to pay attention. This could be in grade school and high school. You can kind of just get away with like, whatever. And yes, you might be screwed for the test, and that's the only reason you would ever want to learn this stuff is because there's a test, and once you kind of, do a few backflips when they tell you to do a backflip, or they tell you to jump high, you ask how high. At least you get the passing grade and it's kind of in your history, right? But if it wasn't for like compulsory testing, then nobody would ever do anything, because it's just all a fucking joke. What a waste of fucking time and missed opportunities it was. Now, something I've thought about too, like recently, is like AI could actually really change this and kind of cater more towards, but you still had to go as slow as the last person. I remember in a class of about 35 kids, if someone didn't get something, like if the teacher says like, okay, does everyone get it? And it's kind of like, yes, we've been over this for the last half an hour. Can we fucking move on, please, and stop hearing about this? And then one or two students are a little bit, we'll just say slower. This isn't supposed to be an insult, but it's just they don't get it for whatever reason. If they don't get it, now all of a sudden we have to have the teacher talk to this 2 or 3 people who don't get it, and the other 30 of us have already moved on and are just like bored out of our minds. Or maybe that was just me. I was not a good student. I'm not trying to brag to anyone like, oh yes, I got it before everyone else did. That was not the case. I didn't get a lot of fucking shit. School's fucking awful. The only reason I got a lot of stuff is because I'm like smart enough to kind of wing a few things and like get by. But for the most part, none of it was natural. And really, I wasn't given a reason to care. The only reason I cared is so you can pass like a quiz or a test, and that's really it. There's like a gun to your head saying if you don't do this, your parents will be mad at you, and they might have to have like go talk to the teacher or get a phone call from the teacher, which is like totally not great if you're like a kid at the time. But man, that was the only reason I cared to even like vaguely try. So it was very lackluster effort on my part, and it felt like it was torture. And I remember there were so many times where my mom, it was so funny. I think I was in 3rd grade. My brother was in kindergarten at the time. And so my mom would pick us up and be like, oh, how was school? And I would always answer good. Nothing else. Just one word, good. Because if I started talking about school and stuff that I didn't really like it would kind of get like backlash. She'd like try to talk to me and say it's not so bad, or wait till it's like I got no like empathy for it, right? But my brother, who was 5 years old at the time, would talk about all these things that he did, and it was just like, as an 8-year-old, you're like, shut the fuck up, no one cares, right? But he was talking about the stuff he did, and my mom was engaging almost exclusively with him at that point, but I just didn't care. I didn't care about school. I didn't want to go there. It felt like I was being tortured almost all the time. The summers were awesome in grade school because it was like, wow, now I can actually do the stuff that I want to do. And I don't have to have this giant, it's not even stressful when you're in like grade school, but it's just like this guillotine that's like hanging above your head. You're like, okay, well, it's going to come down at some point. It's just like constant irritation and nuisance of a program that you have to sit there and tolerate. And there's nothing you can do about it. What are you going to do? Tell your parents like, oh yeah, I don't want to go to school anymore because school sucks? Like, you have to go to school or else you get in serious trouble as like a parent now, right? The only other alternative that I can think of is homeschooling, and homeschooling is probably fucking awesome. I remember I met a coworker who was probably one of the most attractive people I've met, and she said that she was a homeschool. So naturally in the lunchroom I was like, all right, I'm not missing this opportunity. This is a person that I can actually talk to about homeschooling, and we had a very long, in-depth conversation about her homeschooling. She was very well socialized and could hold a conversation, and just because she wasn't like, she was very, very hot and attractive. I would say like she was probably a 9, to be honest, tall and blonde with a great body, but the main thing was she was very socialized, very intelligent, very much able to handle a conversation, not into like the whole Instagram thing and like the superficialities. Just a great fucking, like, if there was like a pamphlet or like a brochure for homeschooling, she would probably be on like the front cover. I'll put it like that. Anyway, she actually kind of inspired me to be like, you know what? Fuck this. I was already at a point where I was skeptical of like government schooling, especially, but private schooling, and I was like, I guess I'm just gonna have to like homeschool. And it's like, well, if she can do it and she turned out as great as she did, why the fuck am I not doing it, So at this point, if I find someone who I can have a child with, which I absolutely want, I would love to be a father. One of the big criteria is it's almost just like you have to be willing. And this is such a big ask, I feel like, because this gets back to like what I was talking about earlier, where it's like men and women have two combating like ideologies going at each other today, especially within the younger groups of Gen Z and the women who are very like communist and over liberalized. But in order to avoid all the fucking propaganda and all the BS of school and just the giant huge waste of time of like outsourcing your like parenting to like people so that you can go to like a big daycare basically, so the second parent can take on a job, and rather than just have one parent with one income and then the other parent be the homemaker and like try to raise the child. I mean, it just seems to me like today we are so much better off trying to do homeschooling and try to make it OG rather than outsourcing it to other people. It seems like a losing proposition. And plus, You don't know what they're learning at school today. I mean, I know what I learned at school 20 years ago, but today it's probably gotten infinitely worse, especially in public schools. My God, if you have to do everything in your power to at least do yourself the service of avoiding public schools, at least the trash one. But really, if you can go for it, I highly recommend homeschooling. I do not speak from experience about this. The tier list should be like as follows: like public school, especially bad public school, avoid at all costs. The people who are going to be sending their kids there are going to have pretty dysfunctional families. Usually, this is of course not the norm, but it tends to be very present in public schools. If you can go to private school, that's even better because you almost can't not afford to go to private school because you want to keep away your kid from all sorts of bad influences that they might get exposed to when they're still developing. And remember, peer pressure is a huge thing as a child. It's like, oh, he's not smoking, he's not drinking by the time he's like 12 or 13 years old. Oh, he's not cool then. And it'll be and if you have a daughter, it's almost like infinitely worse because it's like, well, oh, she's not showing enough skin. Like, oh man, even in like private schools, like girls still like, go out and try to conform to their other friends that might even be from public schools, and it's just like, man, good luck combating that, right? And I guess I'm pedestalizing this from the stands because I haven't done this personally, but I guarantee you this that if and when I become a father, I will absolutely be homeschooling because it's kind of like the reasoning that I told you guys in the last video or two where I said Bitcoin is like, you almost can't not afford to not do Bitcoin because the dollar is so useless. Well, the public schools and private schools are a lot better, right? But it's still kind of following that curriculum of just kind of useless complacency for hours on a day and not really getting anything done or learning anything of nutritional value. I mean, there's so many things that we don't learn in school, and if you can take over your child's education, put them in your own home so that they, respect the family unit a lot more rather than conform to their peers and who are already coming from parents where you don't know what they're doing inside their house, right? If you can control all the circumstances and try to get that sort of stranglehold on your kid so that they have to deal with you and hopefully your homemaker of a wife who's doing this for you while you're getting out getting the bread as the husband, that is infinitely more. You put your kid in such a place where they will be on top of the game in terms of respecting the family and just being completely and totally functional rather than trying to go through all the dysfunction that I feel like I went through as like a kid through grade school and high school wasn't so bad, but grade school was just really fucking brutal, And so a lot of people also worry about like, oh, how will your kid be socialized? Like, and it's not going to be so bad, especially if you do your job as a parent to try to like find other kids to try to socialize them with. And I understand that, again, I'm just idealizing it here from the stands, but like realistically, just ask this to yourself. What did you learn from grade school? What was your experience of grade school like yourself? Did you go home every day thinking like, wow, this was so fucking great. I can't wait to go back to school. Man, I get the privilege of doing homework. This is not going to be a waste of time. Like, I'd rather be doing something else. Didn't cross your head. Yeah, that's what I fucking thought. So if you can at least take control of that and make sure that your son or daughter is having all the information given by you and not the fucking government trying to tell them all this shit, then do that. It will work. It'll pay dividends, and you almost can't not afford to not homeschool at this point. Given how fucking shitty the situation of the country is and what they might be exposed to in school with all the BS. Children believe in like Santa Claus, right? It's not that they're stupid, it's just that they're still learning, and there are many things that don't make sense to them because they're just small. Their brains are underdeveloped compared to like adult brains, right? So they can't think their way out of things in situations that are highly complex, especially when an adult is the ultimate authority. So if you can avoid that and put your son or daughter in front of the curve on that, and you can get them to think for themselves rather than have them just beat over the head day in, day out through fucking school, you will be doing yourself something that almost money cannot buy for you. Like, to put it into monetary terms, it's almost impossible because what we do right now to our children and the way that I felt through grade school is just like, it's not quite torture, but it's like adjacent to it, right? Did I really want to go to music class? Like, I can tell you this, my brother's an excellent musician. There's almost nobody better than him out there. Maybe a few, but he is gifted and extremely talented and has worked harder at it than anyone that I know. And my dad's the same way. They're both in that category. My brother has really done wonders for himself in terms of that. He's very high calibrated when it comes to music, and when it gets to me, I could not be further from that. I have zero interest in music. So why should I, as someone who has no interest in music, be forced to go to music class when someone like my brother was all super, super invested in music and loved going to music class? I'm sure maybe the teacher wasn't so great, but it doesn't matter. Why should you be forced to do things that you're so uninterested in and find so boring that it's almost kind of like torture? Like, music class for me was just unbelievably boring and torturous, whereas it's kind of the same thing. My brother was like a decent sports ball sort of guy. He could play basketball and baseball decently well, but maybe not, probably not as good as me. I was a lot better at those things, so I would rather have been doing that for hours a day rather than fucking sitting inside and just withering my brain away and my talents and what I was interested in. with that. So I'm not saying that, we should not, people who don't like math shouldn't be doing math, and people who don't like music shouldn't be attending music. So, well, yes, you should be recognizing it for what it is and be able to do some basic things with it. But if you're really uninterested and your brain just doesn't focus on that and you'd rather be spending your time doing something else, you should be allowed to be doing that. And I think homeschooling is probably the best option available for that, rather than putting everyone in the same box of like, okay, we're all going to do this today, math for this long, social studies for this long, this for this long. And it's like you don't even learn that much, to be honest. Math is probably the one exception where after like 4th or 5th grade, you really don't learn a whole lot, but like at least that foundation should be there for everybody. But man, it is like completely dysfunctional. And ultimately where you end up being in life educationally, we're not saying like formal schooling, we're saying like where you want to be and what you find interesting in life in terms of your education in like the grand scheme of like life. Like, do you go out of your way to learn certain things, right? I go out of my way to learn history almost every day not because it's like addicting, but because it's so relevant to human nature and it's borderline philosophical. And I know philosophy is like this word that nobody wants to fucking talk about because it's just like, it's like a field study of like something that is like so particular, right? And we don't really give a fuck, right? But we're all philosophical at the end of the day, one way or another. So yeah, everyone should at least touch the surface on most things, but if you could control, and this is why AI will probably be super great, is because rather than all of us be stuck at the pace of the weakest link of the class, where like I said earlier, 2 or 3 people don't get the problem or whatever it is, so they have to ask the teacher, and that takes additional time for the teacher to explain it, when 30 of us already fucking understand or just don't care or just want to move on. AI will probably be able to be worked into the school system in the next 15 years is my guess, maybe sooner than that. And realistically, AI is much better at tailoring to students and their individual needs and preferences, better than the current school system can, because we're all stuck going at this person's pace when some of us are up here. And I'm not saying that everyone's the dumbest person is the worst person in the world. It's just some people are ready to go faster and can move faster. And AI can probably do a much better job of pandering to make sure that this person gets this, and also moving at this person's pace. So there will be a way, I think, that AI moves forward in the school system and is at least able to help. Because right now, AI, and this is kind of getting off topic here to go to college, this is what a lose-lose proposition at this point college has become. You're paying an institution, and you expect the institution should be educating you or doing some rigorous stuff to make sure that you understand what you're paying them for. However, what actually happens is the professor doesn't lift a finger. They get the publisher to do all the homework and outsource it. So not only does the college student have to pay also for the fucking homework code, which is never less than like $70. To a college student, that's a lot of money. And at this point, I'm sure it's like $150 or $100, no less than that. But you have to get the homework code so that you can access the homework. The homework is then propagated by the publisher and monitored by the publisher. So the publisher has all the answers and such. The teacher hasn't lifted their finger to do anything. The teacher probably doesn't even look at the homework, really, to be honest. It's just like so much easier if you just outsource it to the publisher and make the students pay for it. But you're paying people so that they can go pay a publisher to go put this homework here, and then you had to, at least back in my day, Google it and try to figure out with all your friends, okay, how do I get through this fucking hoop here, which has not exactly got everything to do with what we learned today in school. And the format's a little bit different, so it makes it a lot harder to figure out how to get through this as fast as possible, because I already got other stuff to do and I get no time for myself in college, thanks to fucking homework, which is still feeling like torture. AI at this point, you can basically just copy paste what is going into the publisher's form, copy paste it, put it into AI, it spits out an answer. You give it, if it's multiple choice, you can give it the answers and to ask it which one is the closest. I mean, the things that you can do with like AI today to get around this is amazing, and I wish I had it back in my day. But it is totally fucking lose-lose, because now you're just like, you're not even doing like the homework anymore. You're just like using AI to spit out answers and just get it through as fast as possible. You're like, you can even ask it to write essays for you. And the teacher's probably looking at this without like too much scrutiny, knowing that they get paid. I mean, it's just like, we're paying these guys so that they don't teach us anything. We get like the credentials and then we get out of there, right? But whatever. Like, I could go on a rant about college some other time. But AI, the point is AI can do some fantastic things probably and work it into the school system. And I'm sure people are already trying to figure out ways to do this. But this all gets back to the point, like, my God, elementary school felt like fucking torture for me. Going there every goddamn day was brutal, and it felt like my time could have been utilized in some other way. I could have learned like practical skills. I could have learned like how to do other stuff, maybe some like financial stuff, but my God, it was just like a complete and total fucking joke. So anyway, that's my argument for trying to, homeschool your kid if you can. I know that it's not available to everyone, and it's almost like girls get like the ick, whatever that stupid fucking shit is, right? Girls will get the ick if you try to say something to them, like, you go on a date with them, and you're like, hey, so what are your kind of deal breakers? And it's like, ma'am, let me tell you here, Isabella, my beliefs on these government schools and private schools, they are severely lacking and fucking suck ass at teaching our kid how to do anything when it comes to like job market, how to have a good family, how to do anything that's really practical, and they just fucking take you on these tangents that lead you nowhere. I think that we need to really think about homeschooling and trying to make sure our kid doesn't get exposed to fucking government schools and private school and the whole curriculum of the state. What do you think about that? And to any attractive girl who's under 25, I wonder, this kind of makes me think, what would have happened if I asked that blonde, really smoking hot chick who was also intelligent, what she thought about that? If like, let's pretend I went on like a date with her. She had a boyfriend at the time, but trust me, if I was thinking about it. I wonder what would have happened if I like went on a date with her or someone like that who's like kind of intelligent and said that, what her reaction would have been. That's probably been the only girl I can think of, or one of the few girls I can think of that would have even had a remotely good reaction to something like that. Because when you go on like a date with like a girl today and they're like under 25 and they have like an Instagram, it just sounds like a lot of fucking work and it's unnecessary. It's like, no, I want to put my kid into fucking daycare so I can do whatever I want around the house. It's like, we have to put this kind of investment into our kids now. Like, we can't allow them to go to these like public schools and just get indoctrinated by the state. I mean, it's just fucking repulsive and disgusting. So this is like a huge deal breaker thing, but my God, it's almost necessary. And trust me, if I have to put in my legwork for it to make it happen as well, I'd be happy to do it. But as a man, you're kind of expected to provide everything. But understanding how bad the state and the government schools are at this point, I mean, there's no, if you can do it by any means, do anything in your power to get away from these fucking scumbags and the fucking shit system that propagates and the lack of learning and practicality that it enforces. Do everything in your power to get out of it. I highly recommend it. And it's ugly out there for a lot of us, right-leaning men out there today because the options just seem so limited. But man, you gotta really find someone out there who can try to agree with you and try to get out of these government schools and all this BS with it, So that was a lot longer as usual. When I make my videos, these always end up being longer, and I think I kind of have like a little bit of a scatterbrain, and I don't do these typically with like an outline unless I'm using ChatGPT to kind of go over something specifically, like I did in the video about China. But there you go. Those are my thoughts on public schooling and private schooling and what you should be doing, and just trying to get into homeschooling and my fucking experience about how bad fucking grade school was. Man, that was brutal, right? So if you can, do everything in your power to choose someone who will work with you through it. So there you go. I mean, that's my case for trying to get into homeschool. Try to get out of these government schools. Get your kid out of it. It's just fucking toxic. And it'll do so much more damage than you realize. And probably when you realize it, it's going to be too late. So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Get out of these schools. Make sure that you can homeschool if it is at all possible. Explore the option because the damage will be done at some point and there's no taking it back once you enroll in it. So thanks for stopping by. Leave a comment if you were someone who was private schooled, public school, or even was homeschooled. Because I really want to hear about the homeschooling experience from people. I love hearing about homeschooling and seeing how those people's lives turned out. Because, as someone who went to a private school, a lot of the time people were like, oh man, the homeschool kids, man, those guys are going to be fucking retards. They don't see anyone, But if you're a parent, you make your choice and you try to be active about it and find other kids that your kid can have fun with, well, it kind of negates that argument, right? So anyway, thanks for stopping by. I'll see you guys in the next one.